after The November 25th, 2013 meeting of Environmental and Public Works Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ansello is excused. Mr. Antelli?
Here.
Mr. Colby?
Here.
Chairman Daniele?
Here.
Mr. Haney? Mr. Wilcox?
Here.
Mr. Yolovich?
Here.
President Adair?
Here.
Is there anyone signed up to speak for the public forum?
There's not.
Is there anyone present who did not sign up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? At this point, I would like to introduce Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer of the Finance Department, who is here to present the 2014 proposed Monroe County operating budget as it pertains to this committee, the Environmental and Public Works. We will have question and answer period immediately following the presentation. Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much appreciated. Anybody who knows me, I'm not the biggest fan of public speaking, so we will keep this short and to the point, and then the real work will go on right over there at the table. Page down.
Thank you.
Just to give you a very brief overview of our budget, just to put this committee's discussion within a broader context, the total county operating budget going to 2014 is just a touch over $1 billion. That's roughly $3.8 million lower than the 2013 amount. Our grant budget going into 2014 is up about $4 million, sort of a shift from operating budget to grant budget, almost dollar for dollar, not quite. Combined, the county's total operating plus grant budget is about the same as it was from 2013, roughly just a $200,000 change. I would like to note that our budget does comply with the Taxpayer Protection Act of 2007, and the underlying tax levy computation I've done complies with New York State's tax cap legislation. The budget pertaining to the Environment and Public Works Committee, I just wanted to show you at a very high level our appropriations net of service chargebacks. Department of Aviation is almost the same as it was in 2013, basically $100,000 lower compared to 2013. Our Pure Waters is actually up quite a bit, as you can see. Basically, I will say largely the increase is due to the new approach to capital projects. We are utilizing a significant portion of fund balance to fund cash capital projects. Engineering and facilities management, those appropriations net of chargebacks are also up about $1.3 million. There's quite a number of factors that go into there. But I would point out, only because those referrals have come before this committee in the past couple months, there's 3 energy performance contracts that will be going into this end of this year and into 2014. Our solid waste enterprise fund, also a significant jump in appropriations, for $14.8 million to $17.9. I would say there's a lot of things that go into that, but I'll give the lion's share of the credit to that increase due to the transfer hauling contract related to the city's housing demolition program. It's roughly $2.5 million. We incur the appropriation for that expense, but the city of Rochester reimburses us equivalent revenue. Just to provide a little bit greater detail into the Department of Aviation, total appropriations for our airport is just a touch over $20.8 million, a little less than it was in 2013. Service chargebacks are almost what they were in 2013. We're actually down about $5,000. Therefore, the net appropriations, a little bit over $20.3 million. There's no net county costs to the county for the Department of Aviation. The airport authority reimburses the county 100% for that. The airport has a number of divisions. You can read these: administration, airport security, the firefighters over there, field operations, custodial, building operations. You will see the greater detail in your budget handouts, but not a tremendous amount of change from 2013. Just touching upon a few of aviation's highlights. I pretty much stole this from the 2014 accomplishments and objectives. The airport is looking to develop and implement a new safety management system. They just received approval within the past couple months from the FAA for the passenger facility charge number 5 that provides funding for airport capital improvements. That's a small dollar amount, about $4.50 tacked on to passenger airline tickets. They'll be commencing a project involving runway 1028 and taxiway E. It's basically to provide improved aircraft access. Sitting on the board, I've learned that those airplanes weigh quite a bit, and just when they turn on the taxiways, the weight alone can really push the asphalt out of their way. Not on here, I will point out, you can probably guess this for a lot of departments, about 76% of aviation's appropriations are personnel related. I think that's typical for a lot of agencies and certainly no different from Monroe County. Looking at Department of Environmental Services and specifically the 4 Pure Waters districts in total, appropriations are significantly higher than they were in 2013 at just over $116 million. They do have service chargebacks, $34.6 million, which also is higher than 2013. So their net due back is $81.5 million and change. I will say that the total appropriations and net appropriations highlight what I was talking about, that planned use of cash capital, planned use of fund balance to fund capital projects. They have a lot of projects going on in 2014. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. Going into 2014, their highlights include completing construction of the Frank E. Van Laer water treatment plant, their primary tank improvement projects, construction on the Central Gates pump station, and construction of the Sea Soap pedestrian bridge. I don't know what Sea Soap stands for. I just like to say Sea Soap. And then finally, continuing construction on the Northwest Quadrant secondary clarifier and the Frank E. Van Laer aeration system improvement. Sticking with DES and engineering facilities management, a little bit of a change this year. Appropriations are up just over $36.2 million. I'm sorry, yeah, $36.2 million compared to last year's $33.7 million. With that, service chargebacks are also increased. The net county would be just over $4.6 million. Now that's a little bit different from the 2013. I'm just going to tell you outright, in prior years' budgeting, it had been the intent and expectation that engineering would fully charge back their efforts to a capital fund. It just really hasn't worked out that way. We're going to account for that in the 2014 budget. The goal is to still fully charge them back, but we're not there yet. They actually have a project in 2014 to address that. Speaking of projects in 2014, they got a couple things going on related to those energy performance contracts. They are starting now and will complete by the spring construction of the Civic Center Complex Energy Improvement Project. So basically, they have a lot of work to do there, replacing all the chillers to provide air conditioning before the summer hits us, and a major upgrade to their electrical systems. They're also doing construction work on Monroe County's correctional facility. That is both building out a new booking room and holding area and an energy performance contract. The big project, which there's been a lot of discussion, is around planning and design work for MCC Downtown project. That is a capital funded project, about $72 million, and is on a pretty good timeline. And then just rounding out, implementing a comprehensive electrical safety program for Pure Waters in core county facilities. That's an ARC flash program, which I'm sure our DES friends could tell you more about. Looking specifically at the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund managed by DES. Total appropriations are up over $17.8 million compared to last year's almost 14.8. A few minutes ago, I commented on the city's housing demolition project. It's about $2.5 million. That's pretty much the lion's share of this increase. After service chargebacks, we still see the equivalent increase in net appropriations, $17.8 million. So what's going on in solid waste? A lot more than I'm going to tell you about, but I just wanted to highlight three things. They need to complete their construction on the second Millseat landfill gas-to-energy facility. That has been in the works for planning for a couple years. The permit that was issued is actually scaled down a little bit. We would love to build like 10 generators. Well, we're going to have a permit for 3. They're also working on completing the recycling program conversion that goes from a dual stream to a single stream collection system. That's actually made a pretty good headline within the past couple months. Basically taking any kind of recycled material, you don't have to separate it anymore. Glass from plastics, you can all dump it together. And then of course, although this is a couple years out in the future, but a lot of work has to get done now, and that's planning for the expansion of the Millseat landfill. They have about an equivalent size of vacant land adjacent to Millseat to the south that will be expanded upon. Oh, and that's it. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. When I get back to the table, we're open for questions.
Thank you. At this point, we'll entertain any questions relative to the budget of this committee. Legislator Colby.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, I see we're finally going to get at least some of the generators of the capacity out to Mill Street added on. Are the capital costs included in the 2014 budget? Or will that come to that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, costs for the second power plant at Millseat are already part of a capital fund project. We have not identified any revenues associated with the operation of that plant in 2014.
Legislator Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start. I have a number of questions, and I think I'll start with solid waste administration, page 610. I'll wait for you to get there. I'm going to throw you the softballs. Paul's the one that's going to really hit you. All right. Just let me know when you're ready. You ready? Okay. Through the chair, on page 610, it says commercial services and professional services are going up from $61,000 to $461,000. I was just curious why.
Mr. Chairman, the increase in professional services, a large part of that is to the Waste Management Recycling Center, those upgrades and going from the dual to single stream servicing.
Okay. On page 737, I also had a question about a revenue increase. So through the chair, could you tell me why the miscellaneous revenue is increasing $2.1 million?
Through the chairman, that reflects revenue from the city of Rochester associated with their house demolition projects.
Okay, that's the one you just spoke of during the presentation. Thank you. On page 612, sorry, we're bouncing around a little bit. Transfer contracts are increasing 50% next year from $5 million to $7.6 million. Is that also related?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is also related to the city's demo project.
Okay. All right. Go to page 619. Through the chair, commercial services are going from 17,000 to 607,000. Could we just get a brief explanation why that is?
Mr. Chairman, about $590,000 of that, more than the lion's share, is for fiber maintenance and repair.
Fiber maintenance and repair?
That's our fiber network ring around the
Okay.
around the loop.
And is that fiber that's actually, I assume that fiber is lit, it's used, is that correct?
That is used, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, on page 619 as well, professional services are going up from 215,000 from 2013 up to over 1 million from 2012. Could you explain why that is?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, although I'm going to need my DES friends to give me help with the acronym, but basically that's a LIMS software system upgrade, LIMS, L-I-M-S.
Through the chair, Laboratory Information Management System for our environmental lab at Van Laer.
Okay, and could you just explain why that is actually going up?
Through the chair.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Daniele.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we manage much of the laboratory information we generate through this LIMS system. It was an in-house generated system. We're migrating to a proprietary software option, and these are the costs associated with that.
Through the chair, was there something wrong with the old software that you're using?
Through the chair, we've had retirements, as you know, through the department that have the historical knowledge of that and developing it, and we felt it would be better going forward that if we had a software package that the knowledge base was broadened.
Okay. We'll go to page 624. The Irondequoit Bay South Central District. It's on page 624 and 635. We have here that public works contracts are going up 386,000. Through the chairman, could you explain why? Page 624, Irondequoit Bay South Central.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, there are a number of maintenance projects that are planned for in the operating budget at Irondequoit Bay.
Through the chairman, could you elaborate slightly?
Through the chair, some of these projects are I described as deferred maintenance projects, ones that we track on a 5-year planning basis. And through the chair, majority of these projects relate to our Irondequoit Bay Pump Station, which serves the majority of the eastern portion of Monroe County. They're primarily mechanical upgrade projects within the pump station itself, gates, actuators, valves. This is our largest station, and this is work that we've had planned for some time and have deferred, and that we want to accomplish it in the coming year.
Thank you. I'd say that was elaborating quite a bit. Thank you. Also related to Irondequoit Bay and South Central District there, the agency contracts are up $350,000. Through the chair, could I just ask why agency contracts are up $350,000?
Mr. Chairman, the agency contracts relate to transmission and treatment flows, and they are also related to inter-district flows.
And may I just ask why they're up $350,000?
Mr. Chairman, the short answer basically is the rate increase is related, the cost increase is related to additional flow projections, and it's a unit-based charge.
Can I, through the chair, can I just ask what the, what's the rationale or what's the reason for additional flow projections?
Mr. Chairman, environmental services staff have historical data that go back a number of years. Looking at the flow projections for 2014, they are higher than the historical data has suggested. At least the actuals have come out than prior year budgeted trends have shown. This is basically, you know, in a nutshell, basically this is biting the bullet and getting the 2014 budget to try and better match what actually is going to happen.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll move over to the to aviation on page 81. Okay. Through the chair, why do the estimated sheriff calls for service remain the same if emergency responses are estimated to increase?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to clarify for the discussion here. The question relates to an increased number of sheriff's call, yet you're noticing emergency responses are relatively the same.
Yeah, is that actually, is that not true?
Mr. Chairman, not every emergency requires a response by the sheriff or law enforcement. There's EMS-related calls, trips, slips, and falls.
Perfect, thank you. Page 73. And the remainder of my questions are on page 73, so. All right. According to the 2013 budget, one of the goals was to expand existing solar energy project. What was done to expand this?
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, can I clarify?
I apologize.
The page number?
I should have told you. Page 73 of the 2013 budget. My apologies. You don't happen to have that in front of you, do you?
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
Sorry, I have the 2013 budget, Mr. Chairman, in my office.
Okay. All right. Well, we can actually follow up in writing to some of these questions then. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other discussion?
Yes,
Legislator Colby?
Mr. Chairman, on the aviation department, on page 733, Can you explain about the increase in federal aid? And where does this additional money go to? Training or equipment or solar power? Airport security is a line
Yes.
item.
Mr. Chairman, in 2013, that amount was actually budgeted in the Airport Administration Division. It is now reflected in airport security. This is really the agreement between the airport and TSA for law enforcement officers.
So follow-up with that, is that why, for you, Mr. Chairman, on page 732, the airport administration revenues is decreasing from 2013 to 0?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
So those two wash each other essentially?
Essentially, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion? Legislator Haney.
In the solid waste operation, page 288, again, as in prior years, shows that solid waste is budgeted to break even. But it has not in the past, and at the end of 2012, it had run up an unrestricted fund balance deficit of over $15 million, and its current assets exceeded its current liabilities rather exceeded its current assets by like 10 to 1. The solid waste fund, therefore, must be sort of a strain on general county financial operations. How and when are we ever going to be able to resolve this problem and get the solid waste fund back on an even keel where it isn't carrying a huge historical deficit?
Mr. Chairman, it is not lost on me that the Solid Waste Fund has been carrying deficits for several years, in fact, also carrying a negative fund balance. It has very much of my attention. I know from attending these meetings in prior years, this topic has come up, and a lot of folks here have their eye on that second gas-to-energy plant. We want that up online as soon as we are able to get it to generate additional revenue to the solid waste fund. I think the current projection is late 2013, 2014 for construction work, 2014. I know you've heard 2013 in the past, Mr. Chairman, but the date is 2014 right now. I don't have a complete answer of getting this back to financial feasibility, but I do know that debt service and depreciation should reverse themselves in several years. There have been planned losses early with more profitable years once that gas-to-energy plant comes online. And I don't like those kinds of plans where you incur losses now and make money later, but that's the plan we're taking, and for the most part, that's the plan we're moving forward with.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, it's encouraging to hear that we at least have a plan. This is the first time I've heard that. Still on page 288, the revenue from the sale of energy at Mill Seat is shown as $3.6 million, but as I recall from prior years, that's a gross number of which a substantial portion gets paid to, I'm not sure who it gets paid to. What is the net revenue that we're hoping to achieve next year?
Mr. Chairman, the county retains about 41% of the electricity sold from the gas plant. Part of this revenue increase for 2014 reflects an increase, a $5 increase. We're budgeting $70 per megawatt of electricity sold versus the 2013 value of $65.
So the county's net take from the energy is about 41% of the 3,000,006?
Through the chair, Legislator
Through the
Haney,
chair,
please.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, about 3.6 is the gross revenue. We have to back out the operating and maintenance costs of just a touch over $1 million in debt service of just over $1.1 million. That's a net balance of not quite $1.4 million, which is split, with the county taking 41%. It's $575,000.
Okay. And that 570, through the chair, that $575,000 net, that's the number that you're hoping will be able to grow substantially in the future years? Is that it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, yes, with that
With the
second
new-
plant online.
Right. In Pure Waters, the Gates-Chili-Ogden District, pages 617 and 618. A few years ago, the Gates-Chili-Ogden treatment plant was closed, and the sewage now goes to Van Laer. But I don't see any expense in Gates-Chili-Ogden for the treatment costs at Van Laer. How does Gates-Chili-Ogden get charged for its share of the treatment costs at Van Laer?
Mr. Chairman, the GCO share of that treatment cost will be buried in that line for agency contracts.
Oh, the line that's $2,035,000?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, the term agency contracts, does that mean, it must have a meaning, does that mean intergovernmental stuff?
Mr. Chairman, it does have a couple of meanings depending on what department you're in, and inter-district or intermunicipal agreements would also fall within that definition.
Through the chair, moving to, just as a general question, as a follow-up to Mr. Wilcox's questions on some of these increases in commercial and professional services and public works contracts, et cetera, is this the effect of, are we seeing here the effect of your intention to shift from to more cash capital? Are these things that would have been charged to capital funds in the past?
Mr. Chairman, yes, these are projects that even just last year would have been run through our capital improvement plan. But we basically have an opportunity to utilize some of the existing fund balance and actually transfer cash from the operating fund to a capital account for these projects.
Good, thank you. Through the chair, shifting to building operations, specifically on page 628, the account 504-270, local transportation parking, $837,000. Is this still exclusively the rent that we pay for the parking lots on West Main Street?
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman, yes, those exactly what this expense is for.
Okay. Are there any, in account 504-350, taxes and assessments, would I be correct in assuming that there's probably also money, since the lots are privately owned, and I'm sure the lease requires us to pay the taxes, in the line for 504-350, taxes and assessments, is that also related to the West Main Street parking lots?
Mr. Chairman, actually, that kind of detail I don't have with me. If necessary, I'd like some time before Ways and Means to prepare that.
Sure. The, if you could just let me know how much of the 504,350 relates to the West Main Street parking lots, I'd appreciate it. And similarly, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, if there are any costs in account 504,510 utilities, I'd appreciate learning that. Through the chair, the option to terminate the lease on these parking lots pops up. I think it's every 5 years. And it occurred, I think it was 2 years ago. Through the chair, do we have a reason as to why we didn't exercise our option to terminate our lease on these parking lots, since the reason we originally leased them disappeared years ago?
Mr. Chairman, the legislator is correct. We renewed those contracts. Those leases give Monroe County, I guess the phrase is the right of first refusal on its purchase. There was at least a city-sponsored, it might have been city-county sponsored, study of parking needs west of the Genesee, and that study did reveal that additional garage parking would be a good idea. So these lease of the parking lots at least gives Monroe County some influence, to say the least, on the future development.
Is that through the chair, is that influence worth close to $1 million a year?
Mr. Chairman, it's nice to have influence over your own destiny. Yes.
On page 628, and I'm sure you won't have the answer to this off the top of your head, but on page 628, in account 504,340 rental of space, which is $3,170,000. If you, I would appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, if before Ways and Means you could provide us with a breakdown as to what the locations of the properties are that we're paying the $3,170,000 in rent for. And similarly, account 504,350, which is $935,000 of taxes and assessments, which again would be related to the rented property. If before Ways and Means, if you could provide us with a breakout of the properties and the related amounts for those, I would be appreciative. On page 764, Mr. Chairman, account 408,200, there's $25,000 of rental income. Through the chair, is this the rent that Civic Center Parking LDC pays the county to sublease the West Main Street parking lots? Page 7.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please clarify the page number.
Page 764, if I haven't mixed them up.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I
Chairman.
must, because that's in the personnel table.
It is, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry about that. Well, I apologize. Someplace in the building operations income, there's an account 408-200 rental income of $25,000, and unfortunately I wrote down the wrong page reference, so I can't give you a page reference. Let me rephrase that, since I'm not able to direct you to the right spot. If within your other response, if you could also tell us before Ways and Means how much rent the sublease is generating for the county on the West Main Street parking lots. I believe the lots are subleased to Civic Center LDC.
So, Mr. Chairman, the income from the sublease, I can get you an exact number for Ways and Means, but it's in the area of like $230,000, $240,000.
Oh, it is, okay. Well, then through you, Mr. Chairman, I guess what I'd like to know is where that $230,000 is included in the income accounts of the building operations. My last question, the general fund is again contributing $1,569,000 to the City Place Fund. Now, in previous years, it's been explained that this is due to unused space in City Place. My question this year is different. If we have unused space in City Place, why don't we move other offices like the public defender into that space? The public defender is paying $258,000 to rent space across the street from City Place in the executive office building. If there's unused space in City Place, why don't we move this public defender or some other entity that's in rented space into that space to use the space and save the rent wherever else it's being paid?
Mr. Chairman, it's not so much an issue of unutilized space as it is unusable space, common area maintenance. Some of those hallways are big enough to drive a Mack truck down. So it's not really a question of moving other departments or teams into that area.
Through the chair, so the problem is not that there's unused space that's usable, but that when the renovations were done back in, I don't know, about 12 years ago or so, the layout was so poorly done that there's a lot of wasted space in the, I'll have to confess, I've never been above the first floor except in the planning office. So was the design of the renovation so poorly done that that's what produced all this wasted space?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure everybody has ideas on how things can be designed better, but I know that there's a huge atrium on the second floor which generally isn't designated or allocated to a particular department. But it's just between that big atrium and auditorium.
There's an auditorium in that building?
It is quite a large atrium.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Legislator Haney. Any other discussion on the budget? There being no further discussion on the budget today in this committee, the next item on the agenda is new business. Huh? Oh, yeah, we got to approve the minutes, huh? All right, well, first we're going to approve the minutes. You have before you the September 18th, 2013 minutes of the Environmental Public Works Committee before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes before the end of the day today. Now the next item on the agenda, actually before we do that, I just want to congratulate Legislator Antelli and thank him for his services on this committee. This will be his final EPW committee meeting, and with that, the next item on the agenda is new business.
Referral 13-323.
That'll be moved by Legislator Antelli and seconded by Legislator Colby. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the committee this evening? There being no other matters, the November 25th, 2013 meeting of the Environmental Public Works Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting will be December 18th, 2013.